Call this meeting of the Senate Agriculture and Consumer Affairs Committee to order. To begin with, I'd like to call on my great friend from Middle Georgia, Senator Larry Walker, if you'll please open us with a word of prayer, and you are number 7.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, everyone. Please bow with me. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful winter day. We thank you for the breath of life you breathed into us this morning, Lord. We thank you for the Georgia ag community and what the Georgia farmers mean to us and our families, Lord. And we pray that you will lift them up, be with them, strengthen them, Lord. Give them determination and courage to continue to do what they do for all of us, Lord. Please lead, guide us, and direct us this morning as we make decisions that affect our ag community and all of Georgians, and give us wisdom and discernment to do things that will be pleasing to you. In Christ's name we pray, amen.
Amen. Thank you, my friend. Okay, first order of business is we need to approve the rules of the committee. You'll find them in your folder. Nothing has changed from what it has been previously. If you all want to just take a look at it, and we will entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to pay, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. All righty. Any further discussion? All right. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? You have to raise your hand.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. I told y'all she keeps me straight. Everybody raise your hand. There we go. It was unanimous, Rachel. There we have. There's our good friend, the majority whip. All righty. Welcome. All righty. The first bill on the calendar today, we have 2 bills to hear, and the first bill is Senate Bill 105. Our esteemed caucus chairman, Senator Jason Anabatardi. There he is. Good morning, Senator.
Good morning.
What number is that? That's witness mic. Let's see. Try it now.
How about now?
We've got you,
Good
Senator.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad the whip showed up just for this bill. I hear he has a lot of questions. I'll be brief. So Senate Bill 105 basically authorized licensed veterans and veterinarian technicians to practice veterinary tele-advice and veterinary tele-triage. It authorizes licensed veterinarians to practice veterinary telemedicine and expands the relationship between the vet and the patient-client relationship. Some of the key provisions of the bill, basically it defines what is a veterinary tele-advice, tele-triage, and medicine. And I know there's a couple of witnesses here that will probably get into the details of why this is important for our Georgia veterinarians that are taking care of our animals across the state. Extends the veterinarian client-patient relationship to all licensed veterinarians employed at the same veterinary facility. Includes regulatory oversight by the State Board of Veterinary Medicine. It creates the standards for veterinary teleservices while remaining compliant with state and federal prescribing laws, which is really critical. It also creates a carve-out for veterinarians to practice veterinary telemedicine without a VCPR in areas of veterinarian deserts. Our legislative objectives, just a couple of them: enhance safety and care, improve access to licensed veterinary professionals through teleservices, protect public health through reporting and zoonotic diseases, improve efficiency. One veterinarian or veterinary technician can have more contact with clients, and lower the cost of vet care through teleservices. And with that, I'll take any questions.
All righty. Thank you, Senator. Do we have any questions from members of the committee? Okay. All righty. Number 12. Senator Summers.
Chairman, does a person calling a veterinarian to get telemedicine, do they have to be a client of that veterinarian, or is it open for anybody?
So I think what we're trying to accomplish here is to make sure that if I am a client, consumer, or have large or small animal in, say, your community, that veterinarian basically is the person to see it, see the animal. I think in terms of, that patient, client, or, as humans would say, our patient provider relationship stays intact. I think the concern is that if we have physicians or prescribing physicians from other states that are trying to see an animal but physically can't see the animal, put their hands on the animal, actually see what's kind of going on, I think that kind of can create a problem, I think, in terms of the care that's being provided. But it's also eroding, I think, a lot of our veterinarians across the state and a lot of small rural communities in particular that, they're trying to, keep their business intact. And I want to make sure that they're not being eroded by folks, maybe from the West Coast that, don't have the same intentions that maybe you all do in your local community.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
I like the bill and I like what you're talking about. The reason why I asked the question is, as you know, in rural Georgia, our vets are thin. We have a thin margin of veterinarians in that area, and on the weekends, you'll have to call probably, say, example, Warner Robins to get a vet to be able to help you with something like that, and you're 45 minutes to an hour away for transport. That's why I was asking, would that vet in Warner Robins be able to help you if that vet's the one on call for your people to do the telemedicine? I'm assuming
Yes.
they'd be able to do that.
Yep.
I think that's a good thing. Thank you.
No, thank you,
Mr. Chairman.
Senator.
All right, thank you, Senator. We now have Senator Robertson, number 4.
Thank you, Senator Anavatardi. I appreciate you bringing this legislation out. Do we prohibit now someone from calling their vet with their iPhone and talking about some issue they may have with a and I'm assuming you're going for large animals and small animals. So do we have anything right now that prohibits somebody calling their veterinarian seeking a consult over the phone?
No, I'm sure it happens all the time, especially if there's a emergency situation or whatnot, especially if you take the example Senator Summers just gave. And, if my veterinarian is an hour away, I'm going to do everything I can to get on the phone, FaceTime, Zoom, or whatever, but the difference is that person they're talking to is actually in the state of Georgia, not in another state.
Well, but your bill, will it prohibit anybody from outside the state of Georgia from calling their vet in Alabama or Florida or South Carolina or North Carolina, having a conversation with them and letting them look at their turtle, dog, rabbit, or horse over FaceTime?
Basically what we're doing is just expanding to include licensed veterinarians within the same physical practice. I know we have practices in East Georgia where there's groups of them to make sure that they're stay whole. I think make sure the definitions around telemedicine, teleadvice, teletriage are very clear. And I think also too, just make sure that under telemedicine we're using strict guidelines, under Georgia licensing, just to make sure that somebody in another state is not prescribing something to a family or for an animal that's they've never physically seen.
Okay, when you say physically seen, I'm assuming you mean that they have to be in the room with the animal. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, so, but are we legislating something that is already in practice now?
No,
Okay.
we're not.
Okay, so I can call my vet up in Pine Mountain today, show him my dog on my iPhone, and what your bill does is just clarify what his or her responsibilities are if I do that?
Yeah, basically, not to start, naming companies, but
Let's name companies.
I like naming companies
I do
sometimes.
too.
But I think it's, if you think of, not to pick on companies like Petco, other, large retail, companies that might be based in another state where, that prescribing physician, veterinarian, prescribing drugs or anything, to that nature will never, visit with that consumer, will never see that person in their local community in Harris County. I think, the vet we're talking about that you're describing in Pine Mountain, at some point, you're going to be in that office, you're going to be in that community, and even if you call them with this device, they still have a patient-client relationship with you in your community.
So, but Mr. Chairman, one last question, if you will. To Senator Cardin's point then, is there a requirement where they have to have at least one in-person visit with your turtle?
Your turtle.
I'm just trying to marry everybody up to what kind of pet I think they'd have, Senator.
Yeah, I'm sure there's at least one visit.
Okay, I do appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And we do also have, our veterinarian experts here that can teach y'all some things too.
Are you saying
Beyond me.
Are you saying you're not an expert, Senator?
I'm not a veterinarian.
Yeah. Senator, do you want Dr. Reddick to come up and just kind of,
Yeah, if there's any other questions.
okay, let's see, we have Senator Summers.
Senator Anderson was ahead of me, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Anderson, I'm sorry.
Senator, I know in your bill it says that on the telephone call that it has to be a veterinarian, licensed veterinarian. The whole time he's on the phone, can he step out of the room and let an assistant take over the telephone call, or has it gotta be a veterinarian on that line the whole time?
Which line are you referring to, Senator?
He's referring to the phone line.
102?
That's pretty good.
102. All the way down, really all the way down to 107.
Here, I'm gonna let Dr. Redding respond to that.
Good morning. Do you mind please repeating the question?
And when you have a phone call like this, is it the whole phone call conversation has got to be with a licensed veterinarian, or can he start the conversation, but then if he gets another call, or if he gets an emergency in the clinic and he needs to go to another situation and then he hands it off to an assistant, is that
So,
vet tech? Yeah.
sure. So that's something that we're trying to clarify right now because we don't have anything very specific in the current Practice Act. So yes, as long as a veterinarian has given clear direction to a veterinary assistant, then they can essentially repeat the words that the veterinarian is telling them to do, because the veterinary assistant doesn't have any decision-making authority. A licensed veterinary technician has more knowledge and training and education, and certainly the veterinarian could pass that call over to the technician, and the technician would be able to, from a very, educated, knowledgeable point of view, be able to help that client out. Now, they still can't make a diagnosis, they can't prescribe medications, but if it's a situation, let's just say it's a downer cow and they're not sure what to do and the veterinarian can't come out, the technician would be able to help offer some tele-advice and tele-triage services or information.
Would that assistant be able to be able to let them have medication?
As long as the veterinarian has given the orders and the prescription, then an assistant is able to fill that prescription, but they would not be able to make that decision on their own to do that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Senator. Senator Summers, number 12.
On line 31, if you will. Senator Robinson and I were on the same sheet here. We're trying to get this laid out for you. Basically, if I read from 31 down to 38, it says the veterinarian basically has to have knowledge of the animal that they're dealing with. Well, if that veterinarian's, if this is a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, let's just say it's Saturday or Sunday, that veterinarian is not available, wouldn't we have to amend this to say that the veterinarian on call would be able to administer telemed to make sure that this legislation works? I mean, I'm just asking in that level of it.
Sure. So I'm really very thankful for this question because we are actually trying to solve that in the VCPR relationship.
Well, what is that?
Sure. So in order for a veterinarian to take care of an animal,
Right.
they have to have seen the animal, they have to have met the patient or the client, and have established a relationship so we have knowledge about them, right? Or go to the farm, have knowledge about the operational practices. Currently, that VCPR, and I'm going to go to Chairman Robertson because I probably know your veterinarian if it's at Valley Vet Associates, and I'm in Harris County, and so Dr. Mike and Dr. Rachel are both veterinarians, right? If your relationship is with Dr. Mike, then, and you've never met Dr. Rachel, then Dr. Rachel cannot make any decisions about your animal, okay? So what this bill is doing, part of this, what we feel is the most important, is allowing associates that are in the same physical practice to now be able to have access to that VCPR. So if Dr. Mike is out and he's not available because he went fishing, now Dr. Rachel can make decisions. She can make decisions that are appropriate for diagnosing. She can make decisions appropriate for prescribing. You know, if she feels like you've got to go to a tertiary referral, she can make that decision for you. You know, if she says, look, I've got to see the animal because it's urgent, she can make that decision.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Senator.
With respect, and I appreciate all our veterinarians, you can't reach a vet if their office is closed on Saturday and Sunday. I mean, unless you happen to have their cell number, which and they don't even answer sometimes, you have to go to these call centers or these, I guess, emergency clinics, if you will. And that's where I'm confused here on that right there. Does this allow you to go to those emergency clinics that may be an hour from your house?
Well, yes, you're always allowed to go to an emergency hospital, and that is also.
I understand that, but
okay.
would you be able to do would they be able to
The
prescribe, not know
telemedicine?
the animal?
So, that's part of what the carve-out is. The carve-out is, which is, the carve-out is on line 163. So, and really that whole section from 147 through 171 is what we're considering a carve-out. So if you do not have a veterinarian that is available, we had to pick some kind of geographical location. So we just kind of picked 50 miles because that's what our large animal, mixed animal practitioners felt was appropriate. Or you do not have a veterinarian that can come take care of the animal, right? So the situation is exactly what you're describing. You're a Friday night and you don't have access to a veterinarian. Then if there are veterinarians that are, licensed in Georgia, they're practicing, like at an emergency hospital or wherever, a regular hospital, and they are wanting to provide some teletriage and telemedicine services, then yes, they can now accept your phone call. They can discuss what's going on with your pet specifically or your large animal specifically. They can potentially make a diagnosis. It's still going to be difficult to get medicine on Friday night, like being very realistic about that. But if you are having now information of what you can do, what you can expect, what the urgency is to, know if you need to rush them in or if you can wait till tomorrow or try, that is what this is going to help with. So yes, you can now talk to a veterinarian. You can potentially even through teletriage talk to a licensed technician who's working for that vet to help solve that situation for you.
Okay. I think I know where you're going with this. I just want to make sure you're there. That's what I'm trying to get there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
All righty, thank you, Senator. I think, Doctor, do you want to just speak real quick about some of the concerns as far as these out-of-state? Do you want to speak to that and some of the implications for that and the reason for the bill?
Yes, sir. Thank you. We have certainly seen you know, whether you want to call them, you know, a bad apple or, you know, a pill pusher, it's, there are certainly, services that are offered, around, you know, out-of-state people who have zero desire to ever come into the state of Georgia, to take care of the animals and be accessible and there to, you know, to provide service. Because, you know, we think about veterinary medicine and sometimes the immediate need is we want medicine. You know, we need medicine, our animal needs something. But it's a very physical practice. It's a very physical job. You've got to be able to understand those animals, having touched them, having felt them, you know what their lymph nodes feel like, know what their heart and lungs sound like. And so, you know, we really want to, we also recognize that the public wants telemedicine and it's a service that we should be providing. So where's the balance? And we have kind of tried to flesh this out so our veterinarians can provide telemedicine, but we're also allowing this to happen from licensed veterinarians in Georgia for our Georgia animals and for our Georgia livestock and for our Georgia food supply, rather than somebody that is out in another state that has zero desire to truly help our animals and their welfare.
All right, thank you. We have one last question. We can go ahead. Senator.
Would this be available for 24/7?
As long as there are people to, you know, that are on a telemedicine teletriage, you know, it's, I guess, finding that person, you know, that in that service that's willing to do that.
In that services or in that office?
That's going to depend on each business, you know. It's so veterinarians right now are required to, once you have this VCPR, then, you know, so if you're a client of mine, then now I'm obligated to provide emergency coverage for your animals. So now that doesn't mean I have to meet you at the clinic at 3 o'clock in the morning, but I have to have some way of providing, you know, letting you know a plan, you know, either go to Warner Robins, to the emergency hospital there, or maybe I've now contracted with some kind of teletriage service, which are out there. Guardian Vet is the one that I've used in the past. And so if you call the hospital, there might be a veterinarian or a technician who is answering the phone, and they can't offer anything other than, you know, it's something that's non-specific to your animal. So certainly this would allow services like that to become something specific for your animal.
All right, thank you. All right. We have one person signed up to speak, public testimony, Jake Tinch. Jake, where you wave? All righty. At that point, what's the will of the committee? Okay, we have one question from Senator Hatchett. Oh, man.
Sorry.
Okay, go ahead. No.
Just for clarity on something you just said, is your intent of the bill to allow people who are not, or do you want vet techs to be allowed to do teletriage?
Yes, veterinary technicians, they are required to work under a veterinarian to be able to make these decisions. So yes, they are working in tandem with a veterinarian, but yes, they could do teletriage.
So I just want to point out, I think we may need to reword this bill because
Okay.
the way it's written right now, it says no person may practice veterinary medicine, veterinary telemedicine, or veterinary triage in this state who is not a licensed veterinarian.
I'm sorry, which line?
You're looking at 102 through 104. Now, the veterinary televice, it says that a veterinary technician can do televice, but as far as teletriage, I don't think a vet tech, the way this bill is drafted, I don't think you would allow them to do that.
Okay, let me see the definitions. Oh, here's our definition. So, based on the definition, let me look at our carve-out. Thank you very much for pointing this out. Because we want in our carve-out, I should have brought my glasses. Yes, sir.
Line 173 to 175. Nothing in this chapter shall be construed to prohibit a licensed veterinarian or veterinary technician supervised by a licensed veterinary technician from providing veterinary triage.
Kind of ambiguous.
No, pretty clear.
That line is, yeah. And that other.
I'll hear you.
Yeah, but that's a good point, but that is only if
Hold on, Senator.
miles of a.
Senator.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize.
Okay, no, you're fine, Senator. Go ahead.
I think the intent of that is right, but the following conditions have to be met for that to apply, which means you can't be within 50 miles of a licensed veterinarian and the other carve-outs that are there. So if you just wanted to call at, midnight because something's going on with your horse, you're 5 miles from the vet, but the only person you can get on the phone is a vet tech. I don't think the way this is drafted, they would be able to do teletriage.
Okay.
And I'm not trying to hold up the bill. I just want to make sure we're going where you want to go with this.
No, that's,
Yeah.
that a veterinary technician that is working under a licensed veterinarian, I guess that's, I think the bill is okay actually in the way it is, because right now they're working under the license of a veterinarian. So if the veterinarian has given the directions of, this is what we're gonna, if you have a colicking horse and you're answering the call, this is what you may and may not, cover, then the technician can do that. This is just saying, but this is not saying that a technician without working under a veterinarian can start doing teletriage services on their own. And that would be against what technicians are able to do within their licensing. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
All righty. What's the will of the committee? We have a motion to pass. We have a second. We have a motion to pass from Senator Watson, a second from Senator Anderson. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by raising your hand and saying aye. All right, looks like it is unanimous. You got to raise your hand and say aye. All right. All right, thank y'all. All righty, thank you for that. On the Rules Committee, Senator Amatardi. We now have Senator Watson. Senator Watson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, it's good to be here, and I'll try to be quick as I can. I know there's some folks that want to speak after me in reference to this legislation, but also know it's FFA week, and I actually got some FFA kids here, and it's great to have them come to the state capitol, and we all know that they're our future leaders in agriculture, and for me, they're still considered the future farmers of America, just because I'm a little bit older. But just great to have them here, and I think it's important as we address this bill, because this is about tools for their future and how they can grow their farms and keep their farms in business. And so I just appreciate them being here and appreciate them coming to the state capitol. So I'll jump right into the bill, Mr. Chairman. And so this is about crop protection tools. It's about food security, it's about food prices, and it's about our farmers' livelihoods. It's a short bill, but it's a very, very important bill. And I'll go ahead and point the committee to lines 2 through 4. I'm working off of LC 60-0078. And if you'll see there, it says to clarify that a manufacturer cannot be held liable for failing to warn consumers of health risks above those required by the United States Environmental Protection Agency. That's what this bill does, and that's all it does. And just to give you a little bit of quick context, and what brought this about was the state of California. There was a case, or in 2017, the state wanted to require manufacturers of glyphosate-based herbicides to place a warning on the label that it caused cancer. Well, the manufacturers could not do that, and they did not do that because the federal government, the EPA, said that they could not do that. So therefore, they did not do that. There was one study done by the International Agency on Cancer Research that said there maybe be some relation there. I have a book here, if anybody wants to read it after the meeting, that is the leading historical regulatory assessments of glyphosate safety. There's 2 of these with research that's been done that basically says that the relationship to cancer is basically non-existent. And there'll be some other people that'll talk about that have more background than I do. But this product has been studied for a very long time. It is a safe product. It's been on the marketplace for over 50 years, and it's vitally important to our ag industry. The state of California, which led to about 170,000 lawsuits at a cost of about $17 billion. And so that's the context. That's why we're here. We're wanting to just clarify this. As a farmer in Georgia, I have 2 big concerns about this. Is number one, I don't want to lose glyphosate. I purchased 30 gallons of it yesterday to use on my crops to get ready to start planting. But number 2, the bigger fear is we need more technologies to continue to feed and clothe the world. And so my fear is, number one, this product leaves the marketplace. The only place that we'll be able to purchase it then will be from the Chinese marketplace, and the Chinese will fully control the entire glyphosate production in the world. But then number 2 is there's new technologies out there, and we want to make sure that we have those new technologies, and we want to bring those new technologies forward. But with things like this going on, they're not going to bring new technologies forward, and so then our future of feeding ourselves becomes in jeopardy. What the bill doesn't do, it doesn't change or lessen any of the regulatory requirements on pesticides at the state or federal level. And it does not provide any immunity. So you can still go down those paths if you want to. The state's still going to regulate these products. The feds are still going to regulate these products. So we're not doing anything in that. We're just clarifying that they can't be held for failure to warn in this legislation. There is one small amendment that Legislative Counsel brought to my attention. If you will look on page 2, line 32, when we're talking about FIFRA, line 32, it's the federal code section. It's currently we have section 135. That needs to be 136. Just a small Scrivener's error, I guess you could say, or the change in the code, but just wanted to bring that to attention. Legislative Counsel just brought that to my attention. And just to kind of close out, if you don't know, we grow about 850,000 acres of cotton in the state of Georgia. We grow 440,000 acres of corn, 160,000 acres of soybeans, and all 3 of those crops are sprayed and treated with this trait technology that we have in glyphosate. So it's vitally important to our state and to us as people, because as Tom McCall always said, the farmer provides, what is it? Food, fiber, and trees. And there's 5 things that the farmer, that we have to survive. Let me get it right. 3 of those come from the farmer. The other 2 come from the good Lord above. And so if we don't have products like this, we're not going to be around very long. We're going to, again, depend on foreign countries. So I know there's some more people lined up to speak, Mr. Chairman. I just appreciate y'all letting me have this time, and I'll be glad to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Senator. Do you have one question, number 4? I believe that's Senator Robertson.
Thank you, Chairman Watson. Real quick, you speak a lot about glyphosate, but this bill would prohibit adding additional regulations to any pesticide beyond what EPA has already done, correct? It wouldn't just be glyphosate. If there were others, they would have the same protection, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All righty. Senator Estevez.
Thank you, Mr.
What number are you? 6? 6. we'll just grab 7 there if you don't mind. 6 is not coming on. Let's see if, there we go. I'm sorry.
All right, no problem. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to piggyback off that question, why not make it specific?
Well, we're just clarifying that you cannot be, the manufacturer cannot be held liable for failing to warn consumers of any product. It's not necessarily just glyphosate. So it is across the board. Glyphosate is what has triggered this nationwide based off of what happened in California. But this could be the case with any other products. The manufacturers are not allowed to put anything on the label that the federal government, won't allow them to. In this case, there's not enough research to say that glyphosate causes cancer. So therefore, the EPA will not let them put it on the label. But this could be the case with any other new technology or any other neonicotinoids or any other dicamba or any other products that are on the marketplace or come on the marketplace in the very near future. This could happen to anybody.
Okay, thank you. And I guess one of my concerns is that, and I don't know what the EPA process for registering is, and maybe you or someone can shed light on that.
Senator, I believe we're going to have some testimony that you'll be able to ask the questions. It's a very long and drawn-out process, but there'll be others coming up that you'll be able to ask that question to.
Yeah, I guess the question that I will have is, if sometimes the federal government is the last to respond. Oftentimes, the manufacturer has more information on the potential impacts than the federal government has, and I wonder whether this would be allowing the manufacturer to rely on the lag or the slowness of the federal government, and potentially avoid this duty because the federal government did not have as much information or was moving more slowly. But again, that's without knowing the full process.
Well, in my small little bit of knowledge of pesticides, before any manufacturer is allowed to put it on the marketplace, they have to get that approval from the EPA. No matter how many years that takes, they're not allowed to put it on the marketplace until they have that approval, until it's been tested, until the label and everything, that they check all the boxes. And then at that point, if it takes them 10 years, then the manufacturer can put it on the marketplace. And they may be able to touch on that more so, but that's my understanding of how it works. And just again, and another product, being a vegetable grower, we had a product called methyl bromide that we were able to use a long time ago, and it has since been removed from the marketplace, and it completely changed the dynamic that we have in the United States. It's another one of those unfair things that we hear about, because farmers are able to use methyl bromide in other countries, but the American farmer is not able to use that product, and it's put us at an extreme disadvantage because methyl bromide was a very good soil fumigant. It controlled weeds, and it did a lot of great things, but we can no longer use it. And if that was mainly just the vegetable industry, when you're talking about these products, you're talking about the entire agricultural world. So this is huge.
Thank you, Senator. And I'll add to that there's truckloads of produce coming across the border every day that is treated with methyl bromide. Senator, I think we've got some folks signed up for public testimony. I'd like to call up Elizabeth Burns Thompson with Modern Ag Alliance, please.
Good morning, everyone. And I would like to echo the Senator's comments about the corduroy jackets in the room this morning. As a fellow FFAer myself, very proud to see those folks here today, and hope that you'll continue to, I know you're on both sides of the room here, so please do continue to stay involved. That's a great organization. As was mentioned, my name is Elizabeth Burns Thompson. I'm here today on behalf of the Modern Ag Alliance, a coalition that represents over 90 diverse groups in the ag commodities, agribusiness, and in all sectors of agriculture, really across the coast, as well as here in the state of Georgia. In fact, our coalition partners include the likes of Agribusiness Council, Farm Bureau, the Fruit and Vegetable Growers Association, and more. And it's my honor to represent my group today and the Georgia farmers that are part of that and speak in support of this particular piece of legislation. From falling commodity prices to rising input costs, our farmers are already navigating significant challenges. In an industry that operates at the mercy of Mother Nature and the markets, the last thing farmers need is more uncertainty. Unfortunately, the future of critical crop protection tools that Georgia farmers rely on to produce safe food and fibers, as was mentioned, is at threat from the litigation industry. And if they win, unfortunately, U.S. agriculture could face a catastrophe felt not just by our farmers here, but on the dinner plates across all of America. Absent legislative action, farmers will be forced to make difficult decisions that weigh their livelihoods, our own food security, and ultimately national security. Georgia farmers must have the legislative certainty to continue their vital work, and that's exactly what this particular piece of legislation provides. At the heart of the issue today, as was mentioned, is a lot of conversations around glyphosate, the single most effective tool that farmers have in that toolbox for weed control. It's one of the, I think you named some of the statistics about just how much of a leader the state of Georgia is in terms of commodities like cotton, corn, and alike, and that farmers rely on these particular tools for successful harvests, to the tune of about 89% of all cotton acres, 80% of corn acres, and 92% of those soybean acres relying on just glyphosate alone. Without access to these tools, crop yields would most certainly fall. Production costs for these farmers would most certainly rise, and food prices would most certainly rise alongside of that. The safety of these products is backed right here, amongst more, by by hundreds of studies and decades upon decades of research. Glyphosate-based herbicides, are among the most thoroughly tested agricultural products on the market today. Yet despite the clear science, a lack of certainty regarding these labeling requirements has allowed the litigation industry to leverage a single debunked study to make a fortune off of meritless-based litigation. This avalanche of lawsuits disproportionately is targeting American manufacturers and leaving foreign competitors untouched, which creates an uneven playing field that disadvantages domestic production and, frankly, domestic farmers. Left unchecked, Georgia farmers and consumers stand to chance rising input costs that could push thousands of our farmers and our next generations of farmers out of business. Food inflation that could result in nearly doubling the costs that families are already struggling with, and farmers potentially losing access to the tools that they need to provide the food and fiber that we depend upon. Fortunately, today, we have a path forward to avoid that catastrophe. This bill provides the certainty that Georgia farmers need to keep feeding America. In short, Senate Bill 144 simply states that the federally approved label is the law, and a company can't be subject to litigation for following the law. It is equally important to explain what this bill does not do. Contrary to the false claims made by some of our opponents, this bill does not provide blanket immunity for manufacturers. Claims unrelated to the label would not be affected, nor would this legislation change the state's authority to regulate pesticides as they have been doing prior. Ultimately, this legislation reduces confusion, closes legal loopholes that have been formed by the litigation industry to threaten the future of those tools that farmers rely upon. Let me be clear. This legislation is about protecting the backbone of our food system, the American farmer. We all know that farmers have enough on their plates, navigating one crisis to the next. Senate Bill 144 would help avoid that crisis currently spiraling towards American agriculture and ensure that farmers can focus on what they do best, growing the food, fuel, and fiber that we depend upon. I want to thank you for your time and open to any questions.
All right, do we have any questions from members of the committee? Okay, we're lighting up here. Number 10, Senator Anderson.
Ma'am, can you explain to the committee what farmers did before pesticides was available to control weeds?
Sure. It was manual tillage. In fact, if you take a step back and think about the adoption of conservation processes like cover crops and no-till, a lot of those tools are now available because we have technologies to help control that weed pressure.
Thank you, ma'am.
Number 13, Senator Burns.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your input. 90 organizations.
Yes, sir.
90 organizations that feel that complying with federal law is sufficient. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And am I also correct in saying we're not arguing the challenge of whether or not a product may be harmful? We're saying comply with federal law.
Absolutely. I would argue that this is a conversation about, to the senator's question before about why not a product, because this is really a bill about process. It's ensuring that we have a fair process, that any technology, be it the glyphosate of today or the tools of
some future product.
Yes, absolutely.
So that future products would also comply with EPA requirements. Is that not true?
Absolutely.
And then this bill would simply say Georgia will stand behind those requirements.
And recognize that the product should be just as safe in Georgia as it should be anywhere else, and that's why consistency in the labeling is so important.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Estevez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I don't know who all is lined up to speak, so I don't know whether to ask you or ask someone else. Can you explain more about the process at the federal level?
Sure. I will take a very high level at it, but there is someone with far more expertise that I believe is coming right behind me.
Who is that?
That is, we have a toxicologist that is.
Okay, then give me the high level and then we'll go from there.
At a very high level, the product itself, any product that comes forward, is required to have a wealth of research done. And I think some misconceptions is, where does that information come from? Yes, absolutely. As a manufacturer, they're bringing their own research studies forward to the U.S. EPA. When we're talking about the federal regulator in these cases, that is the United States EPA. That regulatory entity looks at that research along with open research from it's in open literature, I believe is the terms that is used specifically by the EPA, as well as their own due diligence. That process usually takes anywhere from 10 to 12 years for any new technology, from ideation to bringing something to market with a federally approved label. Once something has a label, though, that does require, at a minimum, it's re-registered every 15 years or re-looked at. However, I put that as a caveat, that at a minimum, because if there is initial information that comes forward, regardless of whether that is scientific information, research, and things like that, that may require the EPA to look at those things and review that registration. IARC is a great example of that. The EPA actually looked at all of the research that IARC supposedly had done, and then reevaluated and stood to their guns basically, and said, we stand behind our determination. We've looked at all of that, and we stand behind the determination we've made in this case. So it's at a minimum every 15 years, but may be triggered should there be additional information. So these products are getting looked at as science is evolving. But ask that question to the next person too.
And tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe that debunked study also said that red wine and red meat cause cancer as well. Is that not?
Unfortunately, most of my diet, yes.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, good deal. Thank you so much. Our next speaker or next person to give testimony is Craig. Is it Llewellyn? All righty. You got the same last name as the gentleman that married our former ag commissioner's daughter.
Wonderful.
Yep.
There's not many of us running around.
Not many of you running around. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Thanks for allowing me to speak. Hi, I'm Dr. Craig Llewellyn. I'm a principal scientist in the Chemical Regulation and Food Safety Group at Exponent, a consulting company, and I'm here representing the Southern Crop Production Association and Crop Life America, both organizations that service the agrochemical industry. My PhD and postdoctoral training is in pharmacology and toxicology, and I've spent the last, I hate to say it, over 30 years working in industry and state government in those areas. So as we've heard, the overarching regulatory rule of the United States is the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act, commonly called FIFRA. So the main goals of FIFRA is to protect not only humans but also the environment. So that is really where the focus is, the high-level focus, and to get through a new chemistry into the sale into the U.S. and use in the U.S. Registrants have to produce a large data package and generate that data package as required by the EPA. So that not only concerns the identity, the composition, the potential adverse effects, environmental fate of each pesticide, but they also have to consider the evaluation for potential harm to humans, wildlife, plants, and surface and groundwater. So it's a very comprehensive exercise of understanding the impact, or understanding the chemistry, and that impact of that chemistry not only to humans but also to organisms that are on the earth, and also the environment. So the data requirements are very laid out, very strict in terms of what it takes to get a pesticide approved through EPA. And those are laid out in the Code of Federal Regulations in 40 CFR Part 158. So in order to meet the requirements of EPA, you must follow the guidelines in terms of testing. And associated with that testing is FIFRA requires that the testing be done and interpreted so that and designed to protect the most sensitive endpoints for humans. So it really, the human is the aspect of highest concern, because the human is exposed to pesticides via the diet, via application. It's all around us, and we must protect the humans. So from that perspective, it's very clear that there's a great amount of testing that's required. And also there's provisions within FIFRA that require pesticide manufacturers to not violate the law. They would be subject to jail time, prosecution, and monetary fines if they hide or information or not fully comply with the EPA requests. So it's also important to understand, we heard a little bit about the current situation where we have, it's really a partnership between state and federal government. So obviously we talked about FIFRA, but the state agriculture department here in Georgia also has responsibilities. So the federal government, EPA, is responsible for the safety and the label of the product. However, the EPA does not understand the local environment, and that really falls down onto the State Department of Agriculture here in Georgia to understand what's appropriate for use in Georgia. So even though EPA says it's approved for use, it's Georgia who says what can be used within the state of Georgia. So it's a partnership for protecting, again, humans and the environment as well. So I said about labels, so FIFRA is very, very specific about what goes on a label and what cannot go on a label, and a manufacturer of a pesticide cannot add anything to a label that's not approved by EPA. So EPA vets every label and approves every label of a pesticide product that's marketed within the United States. As I said, this is an important aspect in terms of making sure that information on the label is around directions for use, so that the intended safe use is being taken care of, and also protecting the workers who are applying or exposed to those pesticides. So as you heard earlier, it's not an easy process. Right now, the average time to take a chemistry from a discovery to the field is a little over 12 years. And then the resources associated with that are extremely high as well. So there's not a whole lot of products that come into the market. So we've heard of a number of technologies that are relatively old, but very effective, and when used appropriately, remain effective for decades and possibly longer. So that's an important aspect from that. And also we heard a bit about the requirements for re-review. So EPA within the FIFRA requirements is required to, within 15 years of registration, re-review the safety and efficacy of these products. It doesn't mean that they're not going to do it, that they have to do it only at 15 years. So EPA has the mandate that anytime any new information comes to light in the private, public, or government sector, that EPA can call up what they use a data call-in. So they would go to industry, they go to the registrant and say, we have a concern, we understand the science is changing, since this pesticide was registered, we want data. So it's incumbent on the registrant to provide that information to the EPA so that they can reevaluate the current situation based on the current scientific knowledge. Doesn't matter how old that registration is. If it was registered 50 years ago and there's a new concern that's come up in 2024, EPA is going to have a data call-in about it. And that gets back to the aspect of criminal penalties. So if the registrant does not comply, then they are subject to monetary and criminal penalties as such as in the law. It's important really again to note that the label as it is on the pesticide is what is controlled by EPA, and the states really do not have a role in that. And specifically there is a preemptive provision within FIFRA that says that that EPA has authority over the pesticide label and packaging, and the state may not enact any label or packaging statements that are in addition to or different from federal standards except those that are equivalent to or consistent with federal standards. So again, it really pushes back on the aspect of the federal preemption, and that states can't just willy-nilly add things to a label that they feel is required. Back to that aspect of science. Science changes all the time. It's not static. We learn things. EPA is all about understanding these things and has constant oversight over the safety of pesticides and agrochemicals. So it's really important to understand that this is just really a peek under the tent. I think we could go for a couple of days in terms of if we really wanted to go deep into it. But overall, EPA does a great job in terms of ensuring the safety of pesticides. The state does a great job of ensuring that the appropriate pesticides are used for the situation within the state. And it's not a static decision. The decision is a living decision that, as new information becomes available, has to be processed and assessed in terms of the ability to keep the registration alive. Thank you, and any questions?
All righty, we have one question from Senator Hatchett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you walk me through when you said there are things that the EPA doesn't allow on a label, what are those things that they don't allow?
Well, it's any intervening language. So EPA requires the use or directions for use and any warnings or cautions, and it doesn't allow any language other than identity, normal things for sale, weight, quantity, and then the label is required to provide use instructions and any precautions or warnings, and that's it.
But do the warnings have to be consistent with whatever the EPA thinks they should be, or are you allowed to put extra warnings if
No.
you know?
EPA, yes. So manufacturer is not allowed to put anything on a label without EPA okaying it. They must approve anything that goes onto the label.
So if a manufacturer, for example, knows, and this is just a hypothetical, that this pesticide will, if it gets into the water system, it'll cause, you name it, the disease, they're not allowed to put it on the label, even if they knew it does.
Well, the fact that they knew is probably not the issue. The issue is, like, as I said, the private sector and the public sector and the government are following the science. And if a manufacturer knows, other people know, and the EPA's mandate is to call that into question, would call the manufacturer to the carpet and ask them for information as to what constitutes this hazard and or risk associated with their product getting into the groundwater or surface water.
Yeah, make it one last one, Senator. We got my board's lighting up.
Okay.
So.
And if new science does come up, I know you said there's the data call-in. How long does that typically take? If you were going to update like a warnings label, for example?
Well, it depends on the request. So a data call-in there's generally a time frame that's given depending on what amount of data is required. So in some studies, if it's an understanding of exposure, then that's an easy thing to understand. But if it's something associated with safety, that could be a couple of years of study in animals to understand that safety impact. So it really is situational as to what those data call-ins require, and in terms of timing, there's no general rule.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Senator. Senator Eccles.
Yeah, I got a couple questions here. Thank you for being here. So the bill, it clarifies health and safety warnings for pesticide manufacturers, but in your opinion, why shouldn't manufacturers warn for every perceived health risk?
Well, the law doesn't allow that. So FIFRA only allows labeling that is approved by the EPA, and the EPA only allows things on the label that it has demonstrated to be risks to human health or the environment.
So why are the labeling requirements that could differ from EPA findings a problem for consumer safety?
Well, from a consumer safety perspective, you likely would not want to pick up the same product and have a manufacturer decide to make different labeling aspects. So if you pick up one product in one place and another product in another place, it's the same active ingredient. You want to have consistency associated with the safety aspects of use, labeling, and any protective precautions that are needed.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Senator. Senator Estevez. No, I'm sorry, Senator Kemp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much for that information. I know this is about glyphosate, but you all mentioned something earlier, it started with the M, that was actually pulled. Can you just help give some clarification as to like how that worked? Because I think it's helpful just
Senator,
to hear.
I can speak to that.
Okay.
You're talking about
All right.
methylbromide,
There we
and it
go.
was
Yes.
pulled because they said it was ozone depleter.
Okay.
But they're still using it all over Mexico and other countries, and that's one of those deals where I guess that ozone, we don't live on the same planet, you know what I mean? So, it's, yeah, it's,
right.
don't even get me started there, but thank you, Senator. All right, Senator Burns.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your input. I appreciate it. My experience at the federal level would suggest that that EPA, as you point out, controls labeling. Is that not true?
That is correct.
And if states were to change the label or add to that label based upon their own perspective, perhaps misguided, that would be against federal rules and guidelines. Is that not right?
That is correct. That would be running counter to what is within FIFRA in terms of the overarching preemption provision. So from that perspective, California has its own laws. The law that we're talking about is Proposition 65, which requires a warning to consumers for certain things. However, the preemption aspect of FIFRA did not allow that.
Did not allow the manufacturer to place that on the label. Is that
That's
correct?
correct.
Okay. One follow-up, Mr. Chairman, and I'll close. As new products come to market, then EPA, through their evaluation analysis, once they're licensed, they would define the labeling. Is that not true?
That is correct. So,
and again, the states have no direct role in that process.
the states do not have a direct role in the labeling process. The states have a direct role in regulating what's used within the state.
Bye. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Senator. All righty. I want to call up, brevity is the order of the day. We're already going over time. Will Bentley. Georgia Agribusiness Council.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I will cut this down to very quickly, but just say that I'm with the Georgia Agribusiness Council. This piece of legislation, thank you, Chairman Watson, for bringing, is extremely important to our organization. The only thing I want to point out is, as you already know, Georgia leads the nation in peanut production, second in cotton, and is a huge player in the fruit and vegetable industry. That wouldn't exist without the use of pesticides. University of Georgia, Dr. Stanley Culpepper gave us a study dealing with squash, and Senator Watson could probably dispute the cost on this a little bit. It may be more expensive, but he stated that to grow an acre of squash in Georgia, the fixed cost, including harvest and marketing, is $8,370. That farmer spends $38 per acre in weed control using currently available conventional herbicides now on the market. If that farmer were to choose to do it some other way, organic or hand weeding or other tillage, that cost would skyrocket to over $4,000 per acre. So you can imagine what that would do to the cost of fruits and vegetables and other foods in our country. So the point being, this is extremely important to us as an organization, extremely important to our industry, and extremely important to Georgia farmers. So I hope that y'all will vote favorably for the bill.
Thank you, Will. All right, real quick, Adam Bellflower, Georgia Farm Bureau.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. Appreciate the author bringing this bill. My name is Adam Bellflower, Georgia Farm Bureau. We support this piece of legislation. Appreciate y'all considering it today and giving it some time. The only thing I was going to talk about was kind of a little bit about a label. I brought a label with me for a commonly used pesticide that a lot of cotton farmers grow, just to kind of show the detail instruction that is given to a farmer on one of these labels. I'd be happy to share that with any of the committee members once we finish up. But I won't go into those details now, just in the interest of time. But thank y'all for considering this bill, and our organization is very supportive.
Real quick, Senator Estevez, we are running out of time.
Yes, very quickly, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make clear that I'm one of those guys that reads those labels when he's putting weed control out on his yard. So, how many of these lawsuits have been filed in Georgia?
I cannot speak directly to the number. I know we have a couple members that have been involved in them. I'm not at liberty to discuss any of those details right now. I cannot give you an exact number. Some of the previous presenters might can, but I do know we've had a couple of our members be involved in some of them.
All right, thank you. All righty.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to pass.
All righty, we have Senator Summers. No, we have to, that's right, once we amend it, that's right. So we have a motion do pass from Senator Summers. We have a second from Senator Anderson. And I believe we need someone to offer okay. We have a motion from Senator Estevez to amend, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Senator, but I believe you want to change line 32 from 135 to 136. So do we have a motion on the amendment? We have a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand. All righty. Motion passes unanimously. All righty. Now we have a bill that is going to pass, has amended. I just want to take just a quick moment, Chairman's personal point of privilege. You were talking about this. We have one manufacturer left in the United States that's making glyphosate. They've been sued 177,000 times and paid out $17.4 billion, not because it causes cancer, but because of the label. If we don't address this and other state legislators don't address this, what we're going to have is we're going to lose the last domestic manufacturer of glyphosate in the country. And at that point, we will be ceding 100% to the Communist Chinese government, really, and their entities, of a product that the American farmer has to have to feed the American people, that there is no replacement for. And so when you think of food security and what that means for my family and your family and our children, just take that into context as we take our vote. All in favor of the bill as amended, please raise your hand and say aye. Okay. All opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, we have Senator Anderson would like to make a comment.
I just want to say it's an honor for our leader to be in the presence of us today in our Ag Committee meeting. Thank you for being here.
I feel a little intimidated myself.
For real.
Watching good government work.
All right. Well, with that, I believe we're adjourned. Thank you. Thank you all for the time today.